Here at Tech Alley. Thanks to Joshua Levitt for putting on Tech Alley. Thanks to Ryan for helping us record as well. If you do want to see any of our past meetups, maybe you missed a topic you really liked, on Tech Alley's YouTube channel has pretty much an archive of all of our previous meetups. I'm Joshua Copeland. I've been programming since 2006. I've been working with PHP in particular since 2010. And I build software freelance for the last 6 years. It's called Remote Dev Force. I've been doing remote before it was cool. So before the pandemic, before everybody was forced to do remote. So I know a little bit about working remotely. And I've been running this fantastic user group here for over 6 years. So that's over 72 months in a row. I've been keeping this thing going because I like to share open information. Who likes open information? Okay, who likes when the guard keepers keep information? Exactly, right, boo, yeah. So when I was in college, there was no meetup. So that's why I started this, right? How I would have loved to have a network to learn from on the shoulder of giants, right? So I was at the MSG Sphere. I'm in the Death Star right here. These are my two kids. This is a fantastic venue. If you haven't been inside there, definitely check it out. There's a movie called Postcard from Earth by Darren Aronofsky. That's amazing. Oh, I liked it. Reviews have been mixed, but yeah, it was somewhere like right here. And there's this one scene where like these rockets fly above you, and basically, if you're on mushrooms or something in there, you'll probably just completely lose your mind. But it was pretty cool, so definitely go check it out. I'm sure you guys have already seen it. If you do want to get in contact with me, I've got business cards up there. But yeah, hit me up. You have a question. I love just talking to people who are just getting into programming, have been doing it forever, need advice, or want to network. Maybe you're looking for freelance work. Maybe you're looking for developers. Reach out to me. So there's a lot to cover. I'm going to have to really jam through this because this is actually like an hour and a half talk. So if there's a particular topic or something that you want me to slow down and ask questions on, raise your hand. Okay, we can slow down. We're going to talk about going remote, setting up your company to start going remote. We're going to talk about building a strong team, how to keep your remote team strong, and then also about growing globally, working through time zone issues and things like that. So take these stats with a grain of salt, but they are interesting. 51% of employers officially now allow their employees to work from home, when possible, obviously. Only a quarter of those companies will actually follow through. So sometimes when they have a remote initiative, such as the pandemic, a quarter of those have said, okay, now you guys got to come back in, and girls. 65% of employees think that they work best from home. Who here works remotely right now? Okay, we've got a few raise of hands. Okay, of those that work remotely, do you think you're more productive at home than you are in office? Okay. Yes? No. Okay, mixed. No, it's true. So, I have two kids. If they're home, it's extremely difficult. They know where my office is, and sometimes they kick the door down, right? So you need to have a space. You need to set yourself up for success in the sense of setting yourself a schedule. If you don't have discipline in working for yourself, working remotely can be extremely difficult. So I'd love to talk more about what the challenges are, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Most companies that are hiring remote, they have 25% lower employee turnover. So, and it makes sense, right? Like, if you're working remote, most of those companies have pretty cool policies. When I gave this talk, one of the interesting ones that came up is Microsoft has an unlimited PTO benefit, meaning you can take as much time as you want off. I asked that person who worked for Microsoft, why don't you just never show up for work then, right? Obviously, you can't abuse it, but interesting. So a lot of companies that are like, hey, you can work remote, have great benefits on top of it. And because they understand that they're probably, even if maybe you're not working 8 hours, 2 of those hours you would have spent in office are probably right off because you're chit-chatting with this person, and there is time wasted in office. So I think there is that little bit of a balance. Now, collaboration I feel like is better in office sometimes, but we'll get to that here in a second. 4.3 million people in the US work from home half the time. So some companies, they have like a hybrid policy, which we'll kind of talk about here. So a lot of different types of work from home policies. There are some where it's like, hey, come into the office once a day. So it really just depends on the company. In my opinion, if it is a local company, if you do want to climb up the corporate ladder, you're probably going to have to go in the office and rub shoulders and show your face every now and then. Especially if you want to get leadership roles, you have to show some due diligence there. But it is possible in a full remote environment still to do that. It's just a little bit more difficult. A lot easier to brown nose, I guess, when you're in person. So this is some interesting stats just across the world here, but you can see that in the US, 100% remote has gone up, and then across the board in other countries it's gone down. So kind of interesting there. So I feel like if you're in the office, time management, there is a pro and con to that, but still collaboration I feel like is better. Working on a whiteboard was always my favorite. When you're in the room with the architect and you guys are visualizing it there. There are online whiteboard programs and things like that, but there doesn't beat being in person like that. Just an easier way to collaborate, I feel like. Who's that?
The smell of the markers,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just sharing ideas, is easier. Again, networking, climbing the corporate ladder, that sort of deal is better. Now, one of the cons when I worked in office was the office politics, right? I would have this one person that would walk by my desk every single day and spend 10 minutes talking to me about who he thinks should be president. It's all fine. Everybody in here is allowed to have their own opinion, but wasting my time at work is probably not the place to do it. It can be a stressful environment if you're not, if it is, you have a release or there's a 911, everybody in the same room sort of thing, it can create a lot of stress. There could be HR issues. I've seen that as well. For multitudes of reasons. Chatty coworkers or just office noise. One thing is if you are working in office, I would suggest doing a headphone policy. If I've got my headphones on, don't bug me, I'm busy, right? Working remote. I think it does lead to happier employees with the caveat that you are attending meetups like this. You got to get out of the house. You got to meet other people. Sitting in your house 24/7 by yourself is not healthy, right? So there still is that caveat that you need to get out there, network, and have fun. Now, we're seeing this right now, but there's like commercial real estate apocalypse happening where companies are getting rid of their spaces because everybody's gone remote, right? So that is, I'm surprised, but like WeWork's filed for bankruptcy or whatever, that's probably for a bunch of whole other reasons, but co-working spaces have been on the rise. There's a lot of great co-working spaces here in Vegas. If you do want to talk more about that, let me know. I've got a few of them that I would recommend that I've worked out of. Hiring overseas is easier, obviously. Working remote, you don't have to commute anymore. I've heard of people who live in California that had like an hour-and-a-half commute each way. Here in Vegas, I had a 45-minute commute, and I thought that was crazy, and I don't miss that, wasting an hour and a half of my life every day in the car, right? All in all, the cons of working remote, I feel like brainstorm meetings, it's tough. You're talking over each other on Zoom. That doesn't happen when you're in person, right? So I would suggest if you got a big project that's coming ahead, convince your boss or manager or whatever, hey, can we fly everybody out to the headquarters and let's plan this out. I think that would be a better use of everybody's time, especially when it comes to team building. There's nothing like actually meeting your constituents. Company culture is hard to build when you're remote. We did things like office hours, where 1 hour out of the week we would have a Zoom room where everybody would go in, drink beer, talk about whatever, and it was cool. But again, it's not like actually going to the bar after and hanging with the buds and all that sort of stuff, right? So it is tough building a good company culture when it does come to remote. So again, things like an annual retreat and stuff like that is a really great option to still bring everybody together and have everybody meet each other. And time zones can be difficult, especially when working overseas. We'll talk about more of that here in a minute. So this is from Mark Zucker. So he basically said people are more productive working at home than people who would have expected. This is when COVID hit and everybody had to work remote. Some people thought that everything was just going to fall apart when everybody had to work remotely, and a lot of people are actually saying that they're more productive now. Now, Mark Zuckerberg has said everybody must come into the office now or you're fired. So a little bit of a 180 he did here, but this was my point is that when everybody was forced to, everything was great. But at the same time, especially with these large companies who have large projects that need to be scoped out, there was probably a lot of things being missed when it came to planning some of these projects. For example, when they made a networking update, they were down for a full day. Who remembers when Facebook was down for like an entire day? This was like we got a couple hands. So the reason they were down so long is because when they made that network update, the locks on the doors in their own office were unable to communicate to the server, so everybody's card couldn't work. So there was no physical way they could even get into the server room to even fix the issue, right? Again, maybe poor planning during the pandemic or something like that. Maybe that was a part of it. I don't know the timing on that, but yeah. So when you're about to go remote, compile a list of your needs. This again is going towards more like you're planning to go remote. So if you're already working remote, maybe some of this doesn't apply. But you got to just check the boxes and make sure everybody can access things they need to access via the VPN, and doing a trial run essentially to make sure everybody can actually do their job still without having to be in the office. And then at the end, you can announce your remote working policy and give it a shot, but try to do a trial first to make sure everything goes well. Now, one thing I think that is the least appreciated thing in programming in particular is documentation. Most programmers, they'll write it, and then for job security, never document it. I always think that leaving some breadcrumbs about what you've built throw away the whole job security thing. I think it's actually more impactful that you're leaving good documentation to keep your job than to actually keep your cards to your chest. And I just gave you a pack of cards, so that applies to you too. So again, if you're going to go remote, a Confluence page, a wiki, something like that people can go to, rather than bugging somebody on DMs, hey, how does this work? Having a central place that they can go to figure out simple things like, how do I submit a service ticket because my machine can't log into the VPN or whatever. Again, that checklist, throw that into Confluence or some sort of place of when we hire somebody new, what are the steps they need to go through, right? That way they can go to that page and follow that rather than being handheld through the whole onboard process. Encourage social interaction. Again, when you're working in an isolation, it can feel lonely. So you do want to still have things where, whether it's the office hours things, we did cool things like there's a bunch of free games out there that you can play remotely, like Jeopardy style games and stuff like that. Maybe the company gives away some prizes or whatever, better yet, cash bonuses. But things that are fun, right? Outside of just having to work all day. And this is a big one, I think, that a lot of companies don't take advantage of, but make meetings optional. Create a Google Doc or just an online doc that outlines what the meeting is going to be about. Take good notes about the meeting, and even nowadays with AI and stuff like that, there are ways you can plug in Zoom to these AI tools that will actually transcript the whole thing and create topic bubbles about what that meeting was about. That way, even at an executive level, they can see what are the biggest topics that have been talked about across all the meetings in our entire organization. It's a pretty powerful tool. But at the same time, forcing somebody to be in a meeting that they don't need to be in that meeting is a little useless. So make it optional. When I'm hiring, I'm looking for self-starters. I'm looking for people that are going to say, I don't know that, but I am eager to learn how. So if somebody's like, I have no idea, and that's the end of the sentence, that's a red flag, right? I'm eager. If you're going down a job interview, the best advice I've ever been given by an executive recruiter was when they try to stump you, and they will, say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. Trying to BS your way through the question is actually more detrimental than you just being honest and saying, listen, I don't know this. Or maybe applying something that's somewhat like it and just talking through that. Most interviews, they're just trying to look if you have problem solving, right? Talking through the problem, talking out loud, that is what they're looking for. We had a great talk probably a couple months ago from an ex-Facebooker who gave really good advice on hiring and as well as interviewing. If you would like to see that, dig in the Tech Alley archives. There's some really good tidbits of information about that there. All right, setting up a referral program, we'll just zip through this, but the best hires that I've always made have been people that have been referred in. They already know somebody in there, they're more likely to stay, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what these network events are all about too. If you're looking for a job or you're looking for developers, this is the place to network, find people, and you know that they're already passionate about programming or passionate about software because they're here, right? What do you do to stay on top of all of the growing trends, you know? Give me examples. Oh, I Google stuff. Well, what YouTube channels do you look at specifically? Give me actual, like, concrete things, not vague answers. So, you know, to be successful going remote, you've got to be organized. Again, that goes back to documentation and just having a good resource, a knowledge base, if you will, for the typical remote environment. So if you're not organized, then people can become very confused about how to go about day-to-day operations. Okay, we'll zip through this, but this is just a checklist I've built of things that need to be set up before your company can go remote. Anonymous feedback is another tool I would suggest. That's a great way to hear about maybe there's a conflict between two employees and you don't know about it, or one employee is being abusive to another employee or whatever. Having that. Also having 360 reviews, not just giving me information about your manager, but also the people on your team and who you feel like is holding their weight, and who maybe people you're frustrated with and things like that. But have those that be one-on-ones. You don't want people to feel attacked in a group meeting. If there's any time that you're in a group meeting and somebody says something offensive or something happens like that, you don't necessarily want to throw that person under the bus in that. Perhaps have a one-on-one with them after and describe why that was probably an issue. You got to have some sort of chat, whether it be Slack, you know, you name it, Teams, doesn't matter. But someplace like this, the one thing I would suggest though is that most of the channels should be public. Like sometimes I've ran into situations where you need to meet with a certain team and that team's private and you don't even know where to go to address that thing to them. So having whether it be a list of channels or something like that, Slack's really great about that. But take advantage of Slack bots too. There's a lot of great stuff that you can use there, such as instead of doing online stand-ups where we had to jump onto a meeting every day at 9 a.m. and describe what we did, what we're doing, we just had a Slack bot that said, here's the template, copy and paste this and put what you're doing. Put the ticket numbers in there. Leave the information about what you're doing in the tickets rather than in some channel. But it gave us a great way to avoid a 30-minute meeting with 20% of the people not really caring about the other side of the teams and work because it didn't relate to them. And Zoom, yeah, everybody's favorite. Google Meets, whatever it is, but yeah. We talked a little bit about documentation here. One note is There are some pretty cool, I will call them graphing things that have come out recently. One thing I learned about at the conference last month I went to in Austin was something called Mermaid.js. If you ever do need to make a graph in the future, check out Mermaid.js. It's pretty cool. Draw.io is also a cool one if you actually are more artistic and you want to make the graph yourself. Draw.io is great. You can actually export your graph to Mermaid.js, which basically is like, think about a chart or a diagram and turning that into code. So you could actually version control your diagram. It's pretty sweet. I'm not a fan necessarily of the syntax, but hey, it's a great start to actually turning those. One of the coolest things I saw about Mermaid.js was that I could see the whole infrastructure, and then I could click on an app within the infrastructure and drill down, and then it would show me and zoom in, if you will, into the architecture for that particular app. That was really cool. Planning. Okay, quick question. Who here, I guess, does like, let's call it Scrum in the sense of like sprints and stuff like that? Okay. Who here does Kanban, which is more like agile, do it as you need? Okay, a couple of you. I'm curious, like, what do you feel works better?
I mean, I've done Scrum. It works. You know, you get assigned a ticket, you know, or you can pick what you need to do. So it can have one nice for us.
Behind you too. What was that?
I feel the same way. Like Scrum is great. We work two weeks sprints. We just pull whatever ticket we want, or we get it assigned to us.
Do you have tickets that roll over a lot to the next sprint, or?
I mean, I work more on the back end, but front end I've noticed that they have a lot.
Front end has more stuff that rolls over. Yeah.
Kind of depends on the team, what the team's purpose is. For like standard development teams that are developing new features most of the time, Scrum works best. But for like a bug fix team or something like that, a team that can plan out its work 2 weeks ahead of time, you know, like that team can work with Scrum. But if you're going to be getting tasks on the fly all the time and adding stuff, then Kanban's a better approach. And I worked at a company that had some teams that were both, either one, depending on what their purpose was. Because one problem with Scrum is that if unexpected things happen, you have to end up adding stuff to the sprint, and it can become very tricky to manage all that. And at the end of the sprint, it's like, we didn't do anything we did.
Yeah, that's a great answer. However, I would say that in my experience, unfortunately, a company's never had like a bug fixing team and a feature development team. They've always been like one team, and so they've had to juggle that, right? But that is a great idea. If they could split up maintenance versus new feature development into separate teams, that's a fantastic idea. Having sprint planning being for feature development, and then, you know, day-to-day bug fixing and things like that being a more Kanban style. That's actually great advice. Yeah, in my experience, as far as pointing is concerned, how hard is this task? That has been a problem, I would say. I've never seen it done successfully. I've done this Fibonacci stuff and all these other things to like, when it comes down to it, my best advice is whoever's going to do the work should just say how long they think it's going to take to do it. And if they're not conservative, they should double that, because they should take time to write tests and make sure that this issue or this feature has proper tests in the future for newer developers to come in and at least make sure they didn't break it when they're touching it. So yeah, Kanban and sprints are your normal kind of planning. If you have no project management software and you're literally given sticky notes for your day-to-day, you got to change that. Trello is a great, free alternative, whatever. But that's all. I've been in an environment like that where that can become, even from a regulatory standpoint, problematic. If you're given a task and perhaps it wasn't sanctioned to begin with. Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
Well, for our discussion, the biggest problem I've seen with pointing stories is that, like you said, points can be different for different people, depending on basically. If the person who points it isn't the same person who implements it, they can be wildly different. The The other
Absolutely.
problem is that to accurately point something, you really have to know what you're going to do. And that usually requires technical design. And a lot of times at the time, they want to point the story before the technical design, which is important, because you may make decisions early in the technical design that fundamentally change what you're going to do.
Yep.
And so the points could fundamentally change that. But then if you say, okay, we need to decide this, well, we're not ready to technical design.
Yeah, yeah. The best environments I've been in have had project managers are worth their weight in gold. If they can communicate with the product owners, create really scoped out tickets, and then the developer who is going to do it points it, that's been the most successful thing I've seen. However, I'm even currently in a situation where the developers are having to scope their own tickets, which means developers are communicating with product owners, and there's just a lot of, I would call unnecessary time when you could have one PM that's kind of doing all of that. And developers do what they do best, write software, not project management, right? But it is tough, convincing a company to make that jump. Sometimes they feel like they need a approved Scrum Master and all this stuff. No, you just need somebody who's good at communicating and creating good tickets, of what needs to be built. All right, so we're going to zip through a little bit here. But again, when if you're in a team, communication's key. So I would still suggest having retros. If you're doing sprints, you should talk about what went well, what didn't go well in the last sprint. That way, when you're planning new sprints, you can kind of identify, okay, what can we improve about going forward when we are planning new work, right? As well as in general, you're going to probably find out information during that retro that could just help benefit you going forward when it comes to sprint planning and scoping out work and stuff like that. And still having Zoom stand-ups is not a bad idea. I would just suggest not having like a mega Zoom stand-up where it's multiple teams. Like try to keep it a little isolated, so that way you can make use of everybody's time very well. Setting goals and stuff like that is great as well, especially when it comes to projects. Even if it's a vague deadline or something like that, having some sort of date on the board is always a good idea. If you give a developer forever to work on something, they'll take forever to work on it. But know your team, know who's best at this. For example, like we just talked about pointing, if somebody knows this side of the system really well, they're probably going to get it done quicker. But maybe they could work with another team member so that other team member can learn that side of the system. Perhaps that's a great opportunity for pair programming or a little bit of mentorship so that they can get more exposure to other sides of the business. And bad management. Who here has had bad managers? Okay, everybody, right? Yeah, okay. So Lumberg here from Office Space is a great example. I'm going to need you to come in on Saturday too, right? When it comes down to it, you have to have really good introspective, especially when you're in a leadership position, to know when you're overreaching. And again, this goes back to 360 reviews. As a manager, you shouldn't be receiving feedback on you in a call. It should be, again, done in an HR perspective where HR is getting information, and then that information maybe gets fed back to you in an anonymous fashion, so that way there isn't necessarily something on the developer where they feel like they're going to lose their job or whatever because they got bad feedback about something. That will give you some more introspective about where you're failing and maybe where you're doing really well as far as managing. And I would try to keep teams around 5 to 20 is a little much, but if you are leading a team, it should be around that range. You don't really want to go over 20 because at that point, it just becomes unmanageable. You need lieutenants at that point. You need people underneath you kind of helping manage those teams. All right, so about building company culture, really when it comes down to it, everybody needs to respect each other, trust each other with work and things like that. That means no throwing people under the bus in public settings. You need things that are fun outside of the day-to-day work too, like I mentioned, whether it be games or something like that. once a month where you're giving away prizes and just having a good time. That's a great opportunity. Like I mentioned, annual retreats and stuff, make sure it's inclusive. They can bring their family, things like that. I worked at a company here in Vegas. I won't mention who, but we all got flown out to Palm Springs. I asked, can I take my family? And he said, no, we're not a family company. And then I pretty much was looking for a new job the next day. They were more party-based company, if you want to say that. But they had quite a bit of amount of HR issues at the same time. So again, that company culture was super toxic. So don't stick around for that kind of stuff. Keep moving, right? Find somewhere that you fit with your personality and stuff like that. And again, with company culture, maybe you do have a day in the office or something like that. Those are great opportunities to have those planning meetings and stuff like that and really make use of everybody's time when they're in the office. They don't just go to their desk and that's it. Quiet hours, this is something neat I've seen where, hey, even if you're working remote, from 3 to 4, no DMing anybody unless it's a fire, right? So that way you have a solid amount of time to actually write code, do work. That's been also something I think has been good for developers in particular. Setting a meeting schedule, it should be at the same time. That should be pretty obvious. Defining collaboration, again, project planning and stuff like that. Can be problematic at larger scale companies. I've seen in bigger companies, that's always been kind of the biggest problem I've seen is, hey, I'm going to build this. Has anybody in the whole company has ever done this? And putting that in the right chat room or the right distro list or whatever is confusing. So I would avoid reinventing the wheel. If there's some sort of way that you can define, here's everything the company's built as far as templates are concerned, build a repository of templates, and that way people can kind of pull off of other people's work. Any other questions about company culture before we move on from that topic? Okay. Yeah, having a Slack channel where people can just like post memes and stuff, that's fun too. Just make sure it's HR appropriate. We'll zip through this, but I mentioned onboarding. Make sure there's a checklist. One thing I've seen in some situations too is some people have to work in office because there's like physical things that need to be done. And there was a whole team that went remote. The people who went in office felt like, hey, this isn't fair to us. So there's got to be some sort of benefit for the people that do show up, right? So whether you're doing, bonuses or something like that, they should be rewarded for having to commute and go that extra mile, no pun intended, to go into the office. Yeah.
So there's a stigma about like mandatory fun. And I know that's like directly competing with the idea of like building trust on like teams and everything, right? Like, do you have anything you can speak on that would like maybe ease people's transition into being like, oh man, the manager just wants us to show up to this whole meeting over here and just have fun with each other and pretend that that's happening, and then cameras cut and everyone like walks away or whatever. Is that like a lack of trust issue thing there? Do you got to build trust before you build the fun times, or do you need to have like a group of people that are willing to socialize with each other first and then have them force them into like settings or whatever? Like, I literally have no idea. And I've been with companies and I've hated every second of like every time they try to like put us together or whatever because nobody likes each other. And I feel like that's a hard one to deal with. You know what I mean?
Well, it sounds like there's a company culture issue if nobody likes each other, right? There's probably something else going on there, right? Yeah. Those I'll call them Zoom happy hour meetings have been awkward at some times. How I feel like it could have been better utilized is instead of the whole company, like breaking it down to teams, right? Because when it comes down to it, you need to like the people on your teams. If I don't like the person on this other team, who cares? I don't have to work with them day to day, or her. But if that person I have to work with on a daily basis is on my team, that stuff should be addressed ASAP. Whether it be that person maybe needs to get moved to another team because they just can't jive, or the manager steps in with those two people on a meeting and say, hey, listen, what's the problem, right? How can we work this out? And maybe that turns into a problematic call too, but at the same time, that's going just like black mold growing on a wall is eventually going to get to a point where the whole building needs to get demolished because it's just gotten that bad. So you can't let it get out of control. So nibbing it in the bud, if you will, is probably the best thing to do rather than letting it fester, right? Again, that's where I think like if you can suggest like having feedback, whether it be annual, quarterly, whatever, that would be an opportunity. If you have one-on-ones with your manager, that's been outstanding, right? Because in those settings, that's a great place to say, hey, Jack threw me under the bus on this call, and actually he was a part of this project and dropped the ball on this, and this. You got to speak up for yourself too, because I think sometimes, you can kind of like say, well, I don't want to burn any bridges or things like that. But doing it in a respectful, private manner is a good way to do it.
Like the natural gentle way, right?
Yeah. But there's no right way to do it. I don't know. I don't think there's a silver bullet when it comes to building great company culture. There's been companies that have had great company culture, and then management or leadership changes, things go down the tube. I mean, it's just kind of ebb and flow situation, right? So when it comes down to it, if the managers and the CEO and all them are dysfunctional, the rest of the company is probably going to be too, right? So, yeah. Tracking productivity, this can be a tricky one. Just because you closed 100 tickets doesn't mean necessarily I think you did a lot of work, especially if those just say I wrote one letter in the code or whatever, right? Usually if the managers have one-on-ones or if they're looking at what tickets are being closed, what projects are being done, they have a pretty good gauge. They shouldn't be using points or whatever, in my opinion, to be tracking whether a developer or person on the team is doing their job or not. Again, it should come, the manager, project manager should know, are they hitting the goals? Are they hitting deadlines? Going back to setting goals. At the end of the day, one of the best managers I ever worked under was this Irish guy, and he was like, at the end of the day, does it just work, right? It was funny, he just said it like that, but at the same time, did you get it done? Did you get what you promised to get done? That's my barometer of tracking productivity. You can do Gantt charts, you can do all that kind of stuff, but to me, I don't think you need to go to that nth degree in order to know whether somebody's doing their job or not. I mentioned, we just talked about this, but peer review. So things like 360 review, you're not only giving feedback about your manager, but the people you work with. That, again, would be a great opportunity to say, whatever is frustrating you on certain parts of the team. And it could just be processes, too. Maybe processes are jacked up within the team. I joined a team, they didn't have any sprint planning, no nothing. There wasn't even a ticket system. And it's like, hey, just these little things can lead to a lot of success down the road. So being organized and then having some way to get feedback to just better improve the process is a great way to go. You're going to have challenges. Like, again, nothing's perfect. There's no silver bullet here, so there's going to be issues. But at the end of the day, you got to make sure that the team's working well together. And if there is an issue, tackle it ASAP. But it should be a team effort. It shouldn't be all on one person. Well, one thing about 911s, like if there's a production issue, if you're in a larger team, let's say there's like 5 people on a team and there's a production issue, all 5 people should not be on that issue at once. You should have 2 or 3 on there. That way, if the issue does bleed into the 12th hour, you can rotate the team. Everybody will be completely burnt out at, hour 8 if all 5 people have been working on that issue. You will eventually come to a point where nobody is productive, and now you've still got the production issue and nobody working on it. So taking action, again, this is goes more towards just setting strategy and stuff for your team, and making sure that you have good processes when it comes to having a remote team. being humble, ethical. There, especially when you're in like stand-ups and stuff like that, saving 5 minutes at the end to whatever, talk about F1 here in town and how much that's a cluster or whatever. Having some fun at the end of your meetings or whatever, just to decompress. It doesn't have to all be about work. So do little things like that to help kind of like spur up discussion, and some people find that they have things in common with each other and stuff like that. Okay, who here works with teams overseas? Okay, a few of you. Would you say that the biggest challenge to working with teams overseas is the time zone issue? Yes? Language barrier? Yep. That's
another one. Yeah.
So language barrier and then time zone issue, right? Well, I agree. I think, again, this comes back down to a project manager. They should be scoping tickets, and there should be clear scoping, because the biggest thing I've seen when it comes to overseas development is they'll do some work, it's not quite right because it wasn't scoped correctly, and then you have to wait 12 hours to get feedback again when they're awake to find out the answer to your question. That's always been my biggest challenge when it's come to overseas development. I've seen things like where they force the people overseas to work Pacific time hours and stuff like that. I feel like that's almost borderline slave driving. I mean, they should live normal lives too, right? But I've seen that done. However successful that's been, I can't say. But I would suggest at this point, again, it comes back down to if you have a good project manager that can scope out good tickets and can be a good liaison between those overseas teams and the onshore teams, that's going to be your best bet. Having the onshore teams and the offshore teams communicating directly with each other can create some animosity, can create issues, or both teams pointing the finger at each other for why a project went sideways. Any other feedback about that? Yeah.
Problem with offshore team, the biggest problem I've seen is the stand-up meetings, because you have to have them at 7 a.m. if you want the offshore people. And therefore, all the onshore people have to work crazy hours to match the offshore people. And if you don't, and if you say, well, we're just going to have an onshore representative talk about what we're doing for stand-up, then it defeats the whole purpose of the stand-up.
Sure.
You're not going to get the right feedback.
Sure.
Somebody talking about what it's going to be second-hand feedback.
Yeah.
That's the biggest challenge that I see with India specifically, because of the time that's the time zone we're in. They're like 7 a.m. is I think about 6 p.m. there.
Yeah. Yeah, the way I've seen it done well is you break up the teams, like offshore is doing a particular project. That way they're in charge of it. They're in charge of the success of that project. If both teams are working on the same project, absolutely issues are going to come out of that. Yeah. So again, when it comes to working overseas or working with multiple offices across the world, you've got to have good processes in place to handle those sorts of issues. So again, I would suggest trying to break up projects into particular time zones. But if you can't, again, this goes back to there's probably no silver bullet here. You're probably going to either have to deal with the fact that there is a 12-hour delay when it comes to communicating, or I'd be curious to ask more about the liaison. I haven't heard or thought of that one, but that sounds problematic, I guess, as well, in the sense of now you're playing telephone too, right? Because now instead of talking directly, now you're kind of getting secondhand what's going on. So yeah, I could see. I could see there being issues. I went way back there. There we go. But yeah, when it comes down to it, it's just about good leadership. Setting up, people should have specific roles and responsibilities. I see it far too many times. Companies that just say, okay, you're a developer, you're on this team, and that's it. People should have, especially when it comes to building a startup. Like if you have co-founders and stuff like that, there was just one up here, Liquid Auctions. I'm in charge of development. You're in charge of marketing the company and doing the biz dev stuff. Great. If those aren't outlined in the beginning when you're building your company, one side of the team is probably not going to, or one side of the founder is probably not going to be holding their weight if everything falls on one person. I've seen that happen quite a bit of times. So There should be specific guidelines and roles and responsibilities for every person on the team, whether it's a junior all the way up to your executive leadership. When it comes down to good leaders, some of the best things I've seen is, again, one-on-ones. Communication is key. Planting the seed about big projects coming down the pipeline, not hiding things from your team. That's huge. Actually caring about your job. You can't pay somebody to care. I always feel like they've just got to have that personality that they actually care about this project and they want to see it done in the best way possible. Good organization, discipline when it comes down to it, consistency. At the same time, positive, reinforcing when people done great jobs, giving them a pat on the back in public space, and if somebody's not, doing a one-on-one and communicating where they're falling short. And then the most important one, listening. Far too many times I've seen leaders just bark orders and never get ideas or feedback from the team about perhaps better ways that the project could have been done to save time, money, etc. Organizational structure. I know companies like Zappos and stuff have done holistic teams where nobody has a title and stuff like that. I feel like that sounds cool on paper, but at the same time, if nobody has a specific role or responsibility, at the end of the day, I bet you even within Zappos, everybody subconsciously knew where they fell in this chart still, right? So having some sort of organizational structure is key. If you have the resources, breaking up teams such as this, where you have QAs, you have people in charge of infrastructure, you have trusted individuals who have experience in actually architecting what you folks are building or going to refactor, and then having solid developers, obviously, with good leads that they can lean on when they're confused or need mentorship is key. And again, going back to the whole, having good leaders above you, they need to disseminate information in an organized fashion and not just say, hey, we're going to do this project, you go figure it out. All right, zip through that. Going to outsourcing, AI has been huge. And when it comes down to it, it can be hey, we want to do this chat feature in our support chat where it can just feed off of the knowledge base and use AI to answer questions or whatever. If nobody in the team knows about AI, even if somebody wants to learn it, I would suggest leaning on experts to come in, help teach the company about how's best practices and stuff like that. So know when to outsource a project, because sometimes it doesn't actually cost that much to just have somebody come in and consult for a little bit. Maybe they don't need to build it, but they can give you pitfalls and stuff like that before you go and actually run with the project. We'll just zip through promotions. Promote people that are good. This is cool. I would definitely recommend checking this out. GitLab released this remote manifesto a little bit after COVID, but it has a lot of great statistics, checklists, things like that. GitLab, I believe, is a fully remote company now, and there's a lot of great information in there. If you go to GitHub and you put awesome and then any word after it, there is probably a repo out there where people are contributing their ideas about that particular thing. For example, if you're into .NET, just look up awesome.net and you'll find a whole bunch of resources in there about .NET. There's one here called Remote Jobs. If you want to look up books, tools, this is a great resource that just has a bunch of links for you to kind of feed off of rather than having to go down some Google rabbit hole. There's also digital nomads. If you kind of don't have a home, you just work from across the world. I admire those people. There's a lot of great information here in the digital nomads awesome one, and that's it. So I just made a sticker here. Grab one when you leave. It's pretty sweet. My company does back-end, AWS. We do a little bit of front-end as well, consulting or just helping you build a project. Reach out to me if you've got questions as well when it comes to going remote. And so thank you. Appreciate it. We've got like 5 minutes, I believe. Cutoff time, I think, is. Where's my phone? Ah, shoot. What's that?
I have one more comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Something you didn't mention, and I've seen that one thing is making people come back into the office. One important thing is flexible work hours. If you mentioned a 45-minute commute, the difference between a commute at 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. can be hours.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, the successful piece I've seen that have people work in the office, 10 to 7 is a lot easier than 8 to 5 because of 5 p.m. problem.
Rush hour, absolutely. That's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, it's within reason, obviously, right?
Mhm.
You do have to attend meetings and you have to listen to
Yeah.
a lot of companies some companies I've worked with have like core hours are like, okay, these 4 hours we want everybody to be in the office. And other than that, you can work whatever.
That's a great way to do it, yeah. Because I have seen situations where people didn't want to leave at 5 because there was so much traffic, so they would end up staying late like every day, and it's a little unfair to them, right? And stand-ups were at 9, so they had to be there at 9. So yeah, I think a flexible work schedule and having some core hours where you know everybody's there, that's a great way to set that up. I didn't think of that. So unfortunately, we are running out of time. I wanted to talk a little bit about like CI/CD because we had somebody in the audience asking a bit about that. So perhaps at the next one, I'll put a proper talk together.
Or I can bother you at lunch.
What's that?
I can bother you at the dinner.
Yeah, I can share a little bit of ideas there. Yeah, we can scope out the topic a little bit more. Does anybody have any other topics they would like to hear about as far as software or just programming in general that has piqued somebody's interest lately? Yeah, go ahead.
Like your experience freelancing.
Experience freelancing.
Yeah,
Okay.
like what your experience has been.
Okay. Yeah. CI/CD shouldn't be that big of a thing, so I could probably cover a little bit of that. You know, I don't know if that's going to fill up the whole thing, but yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anything else?
So, and I don't know if this is the right idea here, but in .NET, using a worker service versus sockets or web sockets. So the goal is trying to get real-time information and then updating it. And I've seen like 2 videos, and one of them was not using WebSockets, but using a worker service and having it just because I think with the WebSocket you can put an event handler, have that event handler like for the time, watch when the time changes, or a web service, and then with the web service you can set it up. Not the worker service, I think, or you could set it up to where it updates, you know, over a period of time.
Sure. Yeah. That sounds very specific. Is my only thing. I'll talk to you about it after for sure. Are you using HTML5's like worker pattern? Is what you're talking about?
.NET.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So on the back end is more what you're talking about. Okay. Yeah, because there are web workers and stuff like that on the front end. You could probably take advantage of, but if you're doing it on the back end.
Well, I would have to do it in the front end.
Yeah, no, I mean that is an option. If you need true real-time stuff, you're gonna have to probably go WebSocket route.
Okay.
Yeah, because the worker pattern may still have a slight bit of latency, depending on how you have that worker pattern set up. But yeah, we can talk more about that after. Okay, so next month we'll talk about CI/CD. I'll share my experience with GitLab, GitHub Actions, and Azure DevOps pipelines. And then we'll also talk about freelancing a little bit as well. You're freelance, aren't you? Or yeah? Do you want to share as well then? Like have you come up? I know you've done a talk before. We can have what is it called? Fireside chat too. I think where maybe we can kind of talk a little bit. I'd love to hear it. Yeah. Yeah. Last thing, and then we got to split.
One thing that I like specifically as well with the CI/CD pipeline is there's this company called Layered CI, and I found it on a Free Code Camp website. And what they do is if you make a change to GitHub, you can send somebody a link of those changes, and it'll be live. But with Layered CI, there's like a free tier, but you have to pay eventually. And is there anything that works specifically with like something with .NET or like an app? You could set a personal link of your app that will do that, and it's part of like the CI/CD pipeline or that part.
Okay. That might, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of layered CI, so I'd have to look into that one.
Okay.
But typically, you could have your pipeline send like webhooks to Slack and things like that to say like, hey, a new PR is ready, or blah 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 has been deployed. You could probably use patterns like that as well to notify people.
Well, I can do that. That I've set the Slack webhook, but will it also send a link of the change where a person could view it on a website? Like
Yeah, that's all customizable. So you could send them a link of the merge or something like that. Yeah. So you can create your own messages when it comes down to it, right?
Yeah.
So
Like if it's like the repos updated or something like that.
Yeah.
Made a change. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
You mean you can put anything in the message. You could be like, hey jabronis, check it out. We just broke a bunch of stuff on production or whatever. Yeah. All right. Thanks for everybody coming out. Appreciate you all.